Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. I am Amna Said, liaison at the Family Resource Center. Thank you for joining us this morning for the third part of the series on supporting your child's executive function skills. Understand executive functions, milestones, challenges, and implement effective strategies at home for children in middle school. We are glad to have with us today Ashley Olsabadi, Trish Palmer, Christy Bunch, and Carrie Pecoraro, behavior intervention teachers from FCBS's Behavior Intervention Services. Behavior Intervention Services provides behavioral intervention and support for students receiving general education and or special education in grades pre-K through 12. Behavior intervention teachers are assigned to each pyramid and work closely to collaborate with the administrators and staff to develop systematic plans for behaviors. Please take it away.
Thank you so much. Like Amal said, my name is Ashley Latfabadi. I'm a behavior intervention teacher that supports part of the Oakton Pyramid. Carrie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Carrie Pecoraro. I am also a behavior intervention teacher, and I support the Lake Braddock Pyramid.
Thanks. Christy?
Good morning. My name is Christy Bunch. I support the Chantilly Pyramid as well as Fox Mill Elementary.
And
Trish?
Trish, I know you've been having a little bit of technological issues. This would be a good chance to see if we can get you on or not. Amal, I see that Trish is no longer co-host, so that may be why she is not able to.
She's a host now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Trish, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, there I am. Sorry, thank you. My name is Trish Palmer, and I'm the behavior intervention teacher for Region 1, which is Herndon, as well as Rachel Carson. So good morning, everyone.
Thank you. So we wanted to introduce you all to our third session in this series. This series has been broken down by age groups, targeting strategies and developmental milestones for each group. And today we're focusing on students in middle school, so grades 7th and 8th grade. And we've already completed our elementary part of the series. Those recordings are available through the Family Resource Center YouTube page. And then a registration link for our April 4th, the final in our series for high school, will also be available through the FRC. Today, we're diving into the concept of executive function, which plays a critical role in a child's development and learning. And our agenda will cover what executive function is, how it impacts behavior, and specific skills like working memory, metacognition, goal-directed persistence, goal-directed attention and focus, and cognitive flexibility. We'll also touch on strategies to support students, including modifying the environment, teaching skills directly, providing motivation and reinforcement. And by the end, you'll leave with actionable steps to help foster executive function in your child. So let's get started. Executive function skills are essential for managing all the information, tasks, and decisions we face every day. For preteens, these skills are still developing, and it's normal for them to face challenges in one or more areas, like paying attention, staying organized, or managing emotions. These skills are crucial not just for academic success, but also for building good behavior habits and healthy relationships. Today, we'll talk about how to recognize where your child might struggle and explore strategies to help them grow in these areas. Now that we've introduced executive function skills, I want to share a quick video that explains these skills in a relatable way. The video provides a great overview of how executive function develops and why it's such an important part of a preteen's growth. You might have noticed some of the skills or challenges they described that seem familiar based on your child's experiences. I know I watched that and hear very similar to what my household sounds like in the morning sometimes. And as we continue, we'll discuss how to recognize signs of underdeveloped skills and explore practical strategies to support your child's development in these areas. Our brains do not fully develop till the late 20s. So meaning as a caregiver, it's our role to be their support as they develop these skills. For example, you might need to set up a system for how your child leaves for the day with all the materials they need for the day before we begin to start fading or expecting them to do it on their own. Even when our brain is fully developed, that doesn't mean our brain isn't flexible. Executive function strategies are skills that we can all learn no matter our age or abilities. And everyone's in a different place with our own executive function skills and our own underdeveloped areas. That doesn't mean you can't learn and implement these strategies right along with your child. If you feel like this is an area of growth for your child and yourself, go easy on yourself. These are skills that can be learned with practice, no matter your age. It may be important for you to check in with yourself and identify where your strengths or underdeveloped skills lie. And if this is difficult, give yourself grace. Take a chance to learn this first for you before introducing some of these skills for your child. And as we talk today, think about how you might use these strategies in your own life. How can you develop a morning routine you can stick to? Where can the checklist fit in your life? Maybe how can you use timers and Post-its in your own day-to-day? But remember, this is a process. We are meeting everyone with grace and kindness as we build these skills that we already have, whether we are thinking about ourselves or your child. Students' behaviors often reflects their executive function strengths or challenges. For example, a student struggling to follow directions might have weak working memory, or a student who resists transitions may need help with cognitive flexibility. These behaviors aren't just defiance or inattentiveness. They're often a sign of underdeveloped skills. And by understanding the executive function skills underlying behavior, we can approach challenges with empathy and strategies that work. Trish is going to break down the key components of executive function and their role in shaping behavior. Trish, are you able to get on? I know we're still having some of that tech issues.
Thank you
There
very
you
much.
are.
Thank
Good.
you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Good morning again. Executive function skills are all connected and they work together to support a child's ability to be successful in learning, behavior, and relationships. At the center is self-regulation, which serves as the foundation that develops when the other skills are built. Self-regulation allows children to regulate their emotions, behaviors, and impulses, helping them respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. Surrounding it are 5 key functions that contribute to this development. Cognitive flexibility helps them adapt to changes or new information. Goal-directed attention allows them to stay focused on tasks even when there are distractions. Goal-directed persistence enables them to push through challenges and complete tasks over time. Metacognition is their ability to think about their own thinking, helping them evaluate and adjust their strategies. And working memory is what allows them to hold information in their minds and access it when it's needed. By supporting all these skills, we help children build strong self-regulation and independence over time. Self-regulation is one of the most visible executive function skills, and it's often the one we focus on most when supporting children. However, what's important to understand is that self-control doesn't develop in isolation. It's the result of these other executive functions working together. Before children can demonstrate age-appropriate self-regulation, they need these foundational skills. By strengthening these foundational skills first, we set children up to demonstrate better self-regulation in their everyday lives. Working memory is the ability to hold information in their minds and access the information we need when needed. For preteens, this might look like keeping track of their belongings in multiple environments, having ways to remember important things such as lists or notes. Working memory is essential for following multi-step directions and staying engaged in learning activities. When children struggle with working memory, you might notice that they forget what was just said or lose track of tasks or items. We'll discuss ways to support and build the skill to set your child up, excuse me, for success. One strategy you might use could be visual cues like the one presented on the screen. This one was created on the free website Canva, but can also be written on a piece of paper by the door to remind us of what we need to bring. Or physical cues, like prompting them to place their backpack and sports bag by the door, to remind them to remember to grab their backpack before they leave to go to school. You might need to check for understanding. Did they understand what was just said? You might need to ask. Another strategy to use for improving working memory is beginning to teach your student how to use technology to support themselves. This may look like using a device like Google or their watch to set a reminder, using the Notes app on their phone or tablet, or making sure they are independent with getting on Schoology from their school's computer. Maybe they use Quizlet to develop flashcards to practice a skill. Another great strategy is switching up roles. Your student can pretend to be the teacher and have them teach you or their siblings a new concept. Checklists can also help them remember what is needed for that day. Metacognition is simply thinking about thinking. It's like looking at yourself in a mirror. For preteens, this might look like stepping back and seeing the whole picture and being aware of how others are reacting to their behaviors or ideas. This helps preteens try to figure out what went wrong so they can improve next time. They may even seek out feedback from teachers or coaches so that they can improve their skills or performance. For example, when a preteen recognizes when they're failing, they can then think about what they should do next or seek out feedback. Developing metacognitive skills supports problem solving, emotional intelligence, and decision making. When we are looking at how to support metacognition at home, we might consider talking about thinking. One way you can talk about thinking is by modeling your own problem-solving strategies out loud. For example, as you plan dinners for the week, you might voice what you're going to do out loud. I know Wednesday you have soccer, so we're going to need to plan something quick to eat. I need to check the freezer to see what we have first, and then I'll make a grocery list. Anytime we see that our child is reflecting on their actions or a situation that occurred, we should celebrate, name, and acknowledge what they are doing. You might even consider a time in the day where you can identify a glow, which is a successful part of their day, or a grow, a part of their day that wasn't as successful in an area that they need to grow in. You might do this where everyone shares at the dinner table, or in the car, or as you say goodnight. As they begin to set longer-term goals and begin to think past tomorrow, you might need to support them with planning ahead for things like seasonal sports, elective choices, knowing what seasons might be more challenging with responsibilities, or preparation for the transition to high school. Goal-directed persistence is the ability to keep working toward a goal when challenges arise. For preteens, this may be focusing on achieving long-term goals such as getting a solo in a dance recital, or keeping the end goal in mind despite some obstacles. Students need to plan. They also need to wait when it comes to achieving their goal. This is not easy, but that is where their patience, resilience, and perseverance comes into play. These things are teachable and easily modeled in our daily interactions. If this skill is underdeveloped, you may notice kids give up easily or become distracted. They may have a fixed mindset and say things like, I'm no good at this, or I'm a failure. One challenge that families often have is completing a chores list. It can be overwhelming for a student to take on this challenge and persevere through such a large task. What a great opportunity to practice some strategies around goal-directed perseverance. You can break down the activity into chunks. For example, let's start the wash first, then empty the dishwasher. or you may need to coach them through more difficult steps. This might look like supporting your student with the way you sort and load the clothes in the laundry. To motivate and make it fun, you might let your child listen to music as they work. Then, thinking about how to make the task relevant to them. They may not care whether the household chores get done, but they may be motivated by access to a particular activity or time with their friends when it is done. Another example may be when you sit down to play a board game. This would be an opportunity to see how they do when their plan gets derailed or when they're behind in points. This is a great time to look at some complex games and support them with problem solving. Later today, we will give you some suggestions on different types of games or activities you can do with your student. Doing chores takes on new meaning when you become part of the process. It gives you the opportunity to see how much support they need and where they can be independent. As you see their success and their continued independence on persisting through a difficult task, you can fade your support. Goal-directed attention and focus allows us to stay focused on tasks even when there are distractions in our environment. For example, for preteens, this means maintaining attention in class, working on homework, and completing chores. Some distractions that may occur include using social media, talking to friends, distraction by siblings, and wanting to engage in preferred activities. In order to develop sustained attention, there are various strategies that can be used, such as incentive-based plans, offering praise, using self-monitoring tools, and providing supervision. Examples of incentive plans are called first-then plans. These include offering small rewards for sticking to tasks after completing a less preferred activity. Then the teen earns access to a more preferred activity. Providing supervision allows you as a caregiver, with the teen's approval, to check in with them periodically to ensure that they are minimizing competing distractions. The ability to sustain concentration in order to think, listen, or watch with interest can be supported through the use of visuals. This may include a timer, a sticky note of what they need to prioritize, such as a must-do, can-do, want-to-do list. The must-dos are things that need to be done in this work session, while the can-dos are longer-term items that might have, while the can-dos are longer-term tasks or things they have started. A want-to-do are things that might be on their list to get done but are not a priority, like maybe finishing an art project that they brought home. Visuals provide a concrete representation of tasks, timeframes, and upcoming activities. Having a designated space allows your student to maximize their focus and productivity. This place may include things that they have identified which support them to focus, such as having a box of fidgets, visual timers, wobbly chairs, listening to music, or noise-canceling headphones. You might also consider what things need to be removed, like phones, tablets, other siblings if possible, TV, or other distractions. Check in with your student to find out what works best for them, and play around to find out what works and what doesn't work. It may not be the same for each work task. What they might need for a reading assignment may be different than what they need for a math assignment. Checking in consistently is helpful as you both learn these study skills. Cognitive flexibility is the ability to adapt when plans or routines change. For preteens, this might mean accepting changes in a schedule, recovering quickly from a disappointment, or taking redirection from adults. When this skill is underdeveloped, preteens may struggle with transitions or become upset when things don't go as expected. Helping preteens build this skill reduces frustration and makes transitions smoother. It is important to keep a relatively consistent and predictable routine and environment for your child, but also prepare for upcoming changes. You can consider role-playing and practicing flexibility. As you're teaching your child to be flexible, modeling your own flexibility is important to provide your child with clear examples of how they can be flexible. This can include saying out loud what you are thinking and doing, and be sure to explain the advantages you get for being flexible. You may even get their thoughts on how to problem solve. Or you might use a more concrete example. Cook your noodle is a term used to describe the ability to be flexible. The example includes a description of uncooked and cooked pasta. What happens when you bend uncooked pasta? It breaks. But once you boil pasta, what happens if you bend the noodle? This is a powerful illustration of how flexibility gives one the ability to become less rigid and more resilient.
Next, we are going to talk about middle school milestones. Understanding and recognizing executive function milestones you see for your child can help you understand their developmental progress. It is important to remember that there's a range of how these skills develop. Some of those waiting skills may come, while attention and focus do not. It is not a straight path and depends on the individual. It is also important to acknowledge that gaps in executive function can sometimes lead to frustration. For both you and your preteen, it can be difficult to see the strengths in one area and think about how someone is very behind in other skills. As caregivers, reflecting on your own executive function strengths and weaknesses can help us understand our relative strengths, might make our child's challenges feel even more noticeable. Middle school is a critical time for developing executive function skills. As students transition from elementary to high school and face more complex academic and social challenges, their ability to handle these challenges greatly impact their performance. This slide shows what most middle schoolers should be able to do to succeed at home and school. These skills develop at different rates for each student, but by the end of middle school, most students are expected to be able to demonstrate a growing ability to manage their academic, social, and emotional lives more independently. Going along with milestones, we also have listed underdeveloped skills to look out for. Preteens and executive function challenge may show specific signs, such as struggling to follow routines, manage emotions, or to adapt to challenges. It is important to remember that these behaviors are not necessarily intentional, as often pointed the skills that need to be practiced or supported. With increased use of technology, students are spending more time on devices, which can make these executive function difficulties even more challenging. Technology has been seen to create distractions, to disrupt routines, and even delay development of essential skills like attention and self-regulation. As caregivers, it is important to ask, is a skill truly an underdeveloped skill? Or is it an opportunity to reflect on what experiences and practice your child has had with these skills? You should only consider its dysfunction or deficit if these skills have been taught and practiced over time and your student is still struggling with them. When we approach these challenges with empathy, we can see them as opportunities to teach and guide our preteens, rather than simply viewing them as problems to correct. Now that we've identified some of the common signs of executive function challenges, we're going to shift our focus to practical ways we can support our children. Understanding challenges is just the first step. The next step is figuring out how we can help them develop these essential skills. This is where strategies like modifying the environment, teaching skills directly, using motivation and reinforcement, and gradually fading supports come in. Each of these approaches provide different ways to empower your child, reduce frustration, and help them succeed. In the next few slides, we'll dive deeper into these strategies to give you practical tools for supporting your child's growth in executive function. We have highlighted 3 things we can all change. The first one we're going to talk about is the environment in which our students spend their time in. This can be a number of places. One of the best ways to help your student with executive function skills is to change their environment to make it easier for them. There are 3 main ways you can do this. First, you can change the physical and social environment, like reducing distractions or adjusting who they work with. Second, you can change the nature of the task, like breaking it into smaller steps or making it more interesting. Lastly, you can change the way you interact with your student, like using reminders or talking through the situation or scenarios with them ahead of time. These changes can make a big difference in helping your student be prepared, focused, and successful. We'll talk about each of these in more detail next. First, changing the physical and social environment is a powerful strategy for supporting your students' executive function development. Our students are so much more accessible to us than ever before. We can access them through their phone when they're out with friends, or on their way to school, or on their way home, or maybe when they're at practice. This communication is a huge way to change their environment and access to you. Work with your student to create a clearly defined workspace, as well as reducing distractions. Have your student choose a consistent place to work, whether it be a desk, a kitchen table, or bed. Remember, everyone learns differently. During work time, have your student put their technology on Do Not Disturb. Second, change the nature of the task can help make it more manageable for your student, especially if they struggle with staying focused or completing tasks. One simple way to do this is by making the task shorter, breaking it down into smaller, more achievable steps. Building in frequent breaks allows your student to rest and reset, which can improve their focus when they return to the task. Another strategy is to give your students something to look forward to once the task is completed, like a reward or a fun activity. Making the steps more direct and creating a clear schedule helps your student know exactly what to do next and reduces confusion. Finally, building in choices, such as letting your student pick which part of the task to start with or how they want to complete it, can make the task feel more appealing and empower them to take ownership. Lastly, changing the way you interact with your student can make a big difference in supporting their executive function development. Before a situation arises, it is helpful to practice with your pre-team what will happen, so they know what to expect and can mentally prepare. Using verbal reminders throughout the task can help maintain their focus and keep them on task. For example, you can provide clear guidance by reminding them, "Can you clear off the table?" Or communicating clear expectations such as, "After this, you can get on your PlayStation." Also, visual supports like a schedule or pictures of steps can help them understand and follow through with the task and be more independent.
Good morning. There are 2 main ways to teach executive function skills to your child: naturally and informally throughout the day, or through a more targeted and explicit or direct approach. Both methods are valuable and can work together to support your child's development. Teaching formally happens during everyday moments like practicing patience while waiting in line or encouraging problem solving during play. A targeted approach focuses on teaching specific skills step by step, such as helping your child learn how to follow a routine or manage their time. In the next slides, we're going to take a closer look at each of these approaches and explore how you can use them to build your child's executive function skills at home. Talking intentionally with your student is one of the most powerful ways to teach executive function skills. One key strategy is modeling self-talk, which means saying your words out loud as you go through your own thought process. For example, you might say, okay, first I'm going to make a list of what I need to do, then I'll check it off as I finish. This helps your students see how you organize your thoughts, plan, and stay focused. It can also show your child that it's okay to pause, reflect, and adjust your plan. Another important technique is to ask questions rather than giving instructions. For example, instead of saying, pack your cleats, you might ask, is there something you need before you leave? This encourages your student to think about the next steps and take ownership of their actions. Encourage your student to check in with themselves by asking questions like, what's my plan? Or how am I doing so far? Practicing situations together helps them feel prepared and confident. Together, these strategies teach students how to think through their actions and make better decisions on their own. For example, for those struggling with their own underdeveloped executive function skills or EF skills, this may be a good time for you to be intentional about what strategies you're choosing to use and practice in the moment. Saying the steps and actions out loud may help both you and your student. We can support executive function development at home through games and activities. These are some engaging activities that are age appropriate and can fit into everyday life. These activities are grouped into broad categories to give you plenty of options. Some of these activities may include materials you can pick up at the store, while others don't require any materials at all. Board games and card games are excellent for teaching executive function skills. Monopoly Deal is a great choice. It helps build on turn-taking, delayed gratification, and coping with frustration. I'm sure many of us have experienced a frustrating game of Monopoly. King of Tokyo is a fun game where you're a monster trying to take over Tokyo. There are many moving pieces that you have to think through, which support the skill development for multitasking and long-range planning. Dungeons and Dragons is making a comeback. This role-play game helps with flexible thinking and working together as a team. Exploding Kittens is a fun card game that can support your child with emotional regulation, impulse control, and organization.
And Carrie, I just have to chime in. King of Tokyo is a big game in our house. It's something we really like playing. And I know you said you might have to pick up a copy too. So, really taking things full of what your child's interests are. There are board games that fit those interests, whatever they may be.
Thank you. Actually, the next one is where my child focuses on. These games are great for strengthening working memory and focus. Spot It is a fun game where you use your visual discrimination skills to find the common item in two cards. Uno Flip is a new spin on the original Uno game, and it adds another dimension to the game where you flip the card over and essentially get a new hand of cards. That's the one that we play all the time. It requires a player to keep track and sustain focus to have a good strategy. Codenames is a game where two teams try to guess the words on a board using one-word clues from their teammate called the Spy Master. This game supports problem solving and strategic thinking, as well as flexible thinking and working memory. Puzzles help develop important thinking skills because They make your brain work by planning, remembering things, thinking in different ways, and controlling impulses. They can also support flexibility, needing to adapt your plan if you're unsuccessful the first time. Sticking with puzzles can be difficult and can take a lot of persistence to keep trying. One example of a puzzle is Sudoku, which is the one on the right. It's a number puzzle where you try and only use numbers 1 through 9 vertically, horizontally, and in each cube. Another option are the New York Times word puzzles available daily online, like Wordle. Another puzzle you might try would be an escape room. There are many companies in the area that have multiple escape rooms where you pay to go into a room, solve riddles and puzzles there to escape. Logic games or activities encourage problem solving and planning. Fantasy football requires so much executive function. Fantasy football is an activity where, with friends and family, you can build an imaginary team from real football players. You manage this team for the football season and play against other fantasy teams. Their working memory is strengthened when having to remember the player's stats. You might have to demonstrate flexibility if someone on your team is injured. You delay gratification because the season can be long. Planning and problem solving around how to draft, how to trade, and setting up your line. As we get closer to the end of March, we are just in time for March Madness. March Madness is another sports-focused activity. In March, during the men's NCAA basketball tournament, people will select the team that will win the overall tournament, starting with all 64 and bracketing down to the final win. For any time of the year, you can do something like Scrabble. Scrabble is a word game where you spell and combine words. This can be played on a board game, but as another option, you can play with your child virtually as a way to continue to connect when you're not together. Sports and extracurricular activities, whether through school or the community, help develop important life skills. These activities require managing schedules, keeping track of materials, and balancing responsibilities. For example, participating in a play strengthens working memory by requiring students to memorize lines, while sports encourage long-term goal setting, such as improving a pitching technique. Time management and planning are essential for juggling practices, performances, and schoolwork. Additionally, self-monitoring is key. Students must recognize when they're taking on too much and adjust accordingly. It's important to remember that these executive function skills are developing, and it's our role to guide and support students as they learn to apply them effectively. Here is a list of 19 routines middle schoolers struggle with the most. Identify one routine you believe your student would benefit from learning as we go through the steps on how to teach routines through direct intervention on the next slide. To teach your child executive function skills, start by identifying a specific behavior or skill that needs attention. For example, if your child is struggling with completing homework independently, the first step is to pinpoint exactly where they're getting stuck, whether it's getting started, organizing materials, or managing distractions. Next, set a clear and realistic goal, like I can complete my homework on time without reminders. Then break the goal down into manageable steps, such as check my planner, gather materials, set a timer for 20 minutes, and review my work before putting it away. A digital planner, checklist, or a simple routine written on a sticky note can help them stay organized and focused. At first, you need to support them by checking in, helping them set up their workspace and providing reminders as they follow the steps. Over time, gradually, reduce supervision by encouraging them to set up their own reminders or check in with the teacher when needed. As you identify underdeveloped skills and set goals, this may be a good time to include their teachers, counselors, case manager if they have a 504 plan or an IEP. Sharing what you're working on at home can ensure consistent strategies are used at school. When developing strategies to support your child's executive function, it's important to consider their age and stage of development. Middle schoolers may still need step-by-step guidance, but can begin to use tools like timers, planners, and checklists more independently. Excuse me. They may also need strategies for breaking down long-term projects, managing multiple assignments, or prioritizing tasks. Providing structure while gradually increasing independence will help them build these critical life skills over time. While the goal is increasing flexibility as a skill, environmental modifications will still play a role, especially for preteens who have a weakness in flexibility. Many preteens struggle with sudden changes, and when they fail, they might feel overwhelmed if they weren't expecting the challenge. Giving advance notice about potential difficulties help them mentally prepare and approach setbacks with a problem-solving mindset. For example, if your child's about to participate in a science fair, let them know ahead of time that the experiments don't always work the first time and that mistakes are a part of the learning process. This way, they won't be completely discouraged if their project doesn't go as planned. Predictability provides a sense of security, making it easier for preteens to handle failure. When they have a structured environment, setbacks feel more like manageable bumps in the road rather than overwhelming obstacles. For example, if your child's struggling with a difficult subject, maintaining a consistent study schedule helps them see improvement over time. If they fail a test and don't have studying as part of their daily routine, the extra practice may feel like a punishment rather than an opportunity to build their skills. When preteens encounter failure, they often don't know how to respond appropriately. A mental script can give them a framework for bouncing back instead of just shutting down. For example, if your child gets cut from a sports team, help them prepare a response for their emotions and social interactions. Instead of reacting with anger or avoidance, they can say, "I didn't make the team, and I'm going to keep trying and practicing to try again next year." The word "yet" is powerful. If preteens can foresee potential difficulties, they'll be less likely to feel blindsided by failure and more likely to use problem-solving skills. For example, before a big presentation, talk through possible challenges, like forgetting a line or stumbling over words. If they anticipate these obstacles, they can develop a backup plan and recover smoothly if they make a mistake. Failure can bring about strong emotions, especially for preteens who fear embarrassment or judgment. Walking them through difficult situations beforehand helps them manage emotions and build confidence. For example, if your child's nervous about trying out for a play, rehearse different outcomes with them. Talk about what they would do if they forget a line or don't get the role that they wanted. Practicing these scenarios help them build resilience for real-life setbacks. "Pick your battles" is a phrase that emphasizes the importance of choosing which conflicts or issues are worth engaging in or addressing. While structure and limits are important, excessive use of "no" can make preteens more resistant to challenges. Allowing safe and small failures teaches them to adapt and learn from mistakes. Remembering that as a caregiver, when you say "maybe," your preteen sees that as a yes and has already committed to the activity. For example, if your child wants to take on a difficult project, instead of saying "no, that's too hard," try, "That might be a challenge, and I'd love to see how you figure it out." This shift encourages them to take risk and view failure as a part of growth rather than something to avoid. We know that managing screen time at home comes with its own challenges. Today, our topic focuses on executive function skills rather than specific family rules around tech use, which in itself is a big topic. Technology can be both a helpful tool, but also a challenge when it comes to developing executive function skills in children. On the positive side, technology can provide engaging and interactive ways for children to practice skills like organization, time management, and even self-regulation through educational apps and games. However, excessive screen time can also have a negative impact, leading to distractions, difficulty with focusing, or disruptions in routines. For caregivers, modeling your own healthy use of technology is key to teaching children how to use technology in a balanced way. You may also set expectations as a family, such as no tablets at the dinner table. By setting clear boundaries around screen time and demonstrating mindful phone usage, caregivers can reinforce healthy use. These healthy tech boundaries not only help children develop better habits, but can also support teachers who may be struggling with students' use of technology in the classroom, ensuring that students can focus and engage effectively in both environments. Motivation is essential in helping students develop and apply their executive function skills, especially when it comes to following rules and completing tasks. When students are motivated, they're more likely to use the executive function skill they've already learned, whether it's following directions, waiting, staying organized, or managing their emotions. For preteens, motivation comes from buy-in. Having their voice as part of the conversation ensures motivation we are giving them is actually motivating. Positive reinforcement such as praise or rewards not only boost their confidence, but also encourages persistence and effort. Punishment does not teach skill development. It can discourage effort and reduce motivation. Instead, focus on celebrating progress and making tasks enjoyable, whether through fun activities or acknowledging their hard work at the end. A formal system like earning points to get access to something can be a great tool, but remember, it's the positive feedback and encouragement that really help children to see the value of their effort and motivation to keep going. Knowing when to start fading support is key to helping your preteen become independent with routines and executive function skills. In elementary school, you're in the role of a manager in your relationship with your child. In middle school, your goal is to transition into a coaching role. As the coach, our role is to watch and listen for what's happening, to provide positive reinforcement and corrective feedback to support the fluency and continued success with that skill. As the students reach high school age, we may transition again into more of a consultant role. You can begin to fade support when your child consistently completes the task or routines with little or no reminders. Also, when they can recover from mistakes or interruptions on their own, they're ready for less guidance. Finally, when your prompts or cues are no longer necessary and the routine feels like a natural part of their behavior, it's time to step back. These moments show that they've gained the skills and self-reliance needed to handle the task on their own. Fading supports is an important step in helping your child build independence with routine and executive function skills. The goal is to gradually remove the support you've put in place as they grow more confident and capable. Start by reducing how often you give reminders or visuals, allowing them to rely more on their memory and problem-solving skills. Encourage self-monitoring by asking questions like, "What do you think comes next?" instead of providing the answer. Simplify any tools like checklists as they become more comfortable with the task. As they are successful, provide positive reinforcement to boost their confidence and motivation. Over time, you can slowly make the tasks more challenging This helps them to continue to grow without feeling overwhelmed.
As we wrap up this presentation, I want to ground us in the idea that these executive function skills are the foundation for so many aspects of student success. These skills help them manage their emotions, stay focused, and adapt to challenges, whether it's at home, in school, or in social situations. And by supporting these skills now, we're setting them up for long-term success. As we discussed earlier, self-regulation is the outcome of several executive function skills working together. The good news is there are so many ways caregivers can help build these skills at home. Time playing games, structured routines, and intentional teaching moments are incredibly effective. The key is making it engaging and keeping it consistent. As caregivers, modeling executive function skills is one of the most powerful ways to teach them. Think out loud, show your child how you manage challenges, and break skills down into smaller steps so they're easier to learn. Over time, gradually reduce your support so they can take more responsibility. Remember that building executive function takes time and practice. It's a process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but we can be patient with them and with yourself, because as you work together, it's really going to be important to have that collaboration to develop these skills. Celebrate the small successes along the way because they add up to big progress. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge how challenging it can be to support your child's executive function development. Parenting is not easy, and these skills take time, patience, and consistency to build, not just for your child, but for you too. And the good news is that the brain is flexible, meaning it's never too late for your child to learn and strengthen these skills. Growth is always possible with intentional effort and small, meaningful changes. Take a moment to think about 1 or 2 simple strategies from today that you can start using right away, whether it's adding the visual schedule, practicing self-talk, or creating opportunities for flexible thinking. Remember, our goal isn't perfection, but progress. Every small step you take to support your child builds their confidence, their independence, and their resilience. You're doing important work, and even small changes can make a big difference over time. If you were thinking about where to get started, let's look again at that list Carrie shared of the routines preteens struggle with most. These everyday tasks like getting ready in the morning, managing time for homework, or following through with good sleep hygiene often require strong executive function skills, and those are the skills that these preteens are still developing. Understand these struggles can guide us in offering the right support and creating more effective strategies at home. Moving forward, I encourage you to identify which routines your child finds most challenging and work together to break them down into manageable steps. By providing structure, clear expectations, and plenty of practice, you can help your student improve these skills over time. If you want to continue your learning, these books, Smart But Scattered and Solving Executive Function Challenges, that blue one, Solving Executive Function Challenges, was actually featured in that video we showed at the beginning. Those are great resources for caregivers who want to help build these important skills with their children. Smart But Scattered explains how to recognize when children struggle with organization, managing time, or staying calm, and offers easy ways to help them. This book is available for multiple age groups, including adults, teens, and children. And if you're struggling with these skills yourself, there's lots of workbooks that can support your learning and your own skill building. And finally, that Solving Executive Function Challenges. It's a really great book that shows caregivers how to identify problems with executive function, and it provides step-by-step solutions. As a reminder, this webinar was the 3rd in our series, sharing resources and strategies for different age groups. So if you have a high schooler, it may be helpful to attend our April webinar or request a recording to be viewed later. And if you have younger children and missed one of our first 2 presentations, they are available on the Family Resource Center YouTube page. So thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you in April if you are able to attend. And we'll go through and go ahead and answer questions. I know, Gordon, you had answered a question a little bit earlier, and I said that we would answer live. The question is, what middle school elective classes are available? and recommended that focus on developing executive function skills. So at the high school level, Strategies for Success is available at all schools. It is an elective that really targets executive function skills. Some middle schools have Strategies for Success as an elective as well. And as far as any extra support, middle schools are beginning to put lessons in their advisory time. So that would be accessible for all students and it wouldn't have to be a separate elective. So that's kind of an initiative that we're beginning as a school system. And so slowly we've been starting to put some lessons in there. So all students will be receiving some form of executive function during that advisory time, as well as those other opportunities. Erica asks, how would you approach a student who isn't invested in the process? Go for it, Carrie. I see you getting off the mic.
And that's where we looked at that motivation piece. Many of our students aren't going to be invested in it, and that's where we're building kind of like what we call an external motivation system. So pulling in their own voice, what does motivate them? And then turning it into a reinforcement system or a reward system. As we do this and you complete each step, this is what you're able to earn. And that really helps them invest in it and turn it. And once they're in it, it becomes routine and they'll start doing it without even realizing that they're doing it and that they need rewards for each and every step.
It also may be where you're going to spend a lot more time on building some of the skills through your own self-talk and those board games and all of those other opportunities we shared. And maybe not as much time as teaching directly, because that teaching directly does have to really get your student, your child invested in it. There is really important times for that direct instruction, but if you can find those other moments just to practice the skills, build those skills up, it may be easier to get their buy-in in the process because those skills don't feel as difficult or as like inaccessible once they've had some opportunities to kind of build those muscles in other ways. Okay, we also have a question. If a child has ADHD hyperactivity type, do these same strategies apply? So a child has problems with focus and initiating tasks. So I would say absolutely these strategies apply. This is the way we teach executive function for everybody. I'm thinking back to a lot of the when Trish was really sharing about kind of what to do and how to support each of those areas. You may have to think a little bit more, and those supports may have to be in place for a little bit longer. The practice may take a little bit longer. Some of the processes just might be a little bit more extended than a student who maybe doesn't have as many underdeveloped skill areas, but absolutely, this is kind of the way to teach executive function. So Tiffany, you asked, what are your roles as a behavioral psychologist for your individual areas? So Tiffany, our role is actually, we're called behavior intervention teachers. Our department is called behavior intervention services. We come from an array of backgrounds, whether it be special education or through other avenues. And our role is to support schools. Each of us are assigned to multiple schools, usually a pyramid, so about 8, 9, depending on how many schools are in that pyramid. And we go in and kind of coach teachers, attend IEP meetings, support different processes depending on what the students need. Okay. We have another question. Is it normal to see routine regression when kids enter puberty? Absolutely. I feel like that's kind of a natural developmental milestone. We might see regression in multiple areas as we start seeing some of those developmental changes. But I think it's sticking with the consistency as much as possible. Carrie, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
And many times also as students, especially students with executive function, as they start to learn different routines, other things may regress. It doesn't mean that they've lost the skill. It may need that they need a short reminder or maybe a visual in order to help them regain or remember what those routines or skills were.
I would add that, remember, as they get to be preteens, that social component really kicks in. And so they're bombarded by so many different things to be and to look at and to listen to. It's hard. We're competing with things that are so much more lively for them, and school is not, or chores are not. So remember that we're going to have to be cagier, smarter than the outside forces are. So when we talk about first then, that's a really good plan. Let's get this done and then we're going to go whatever. Let's do this and then we're going to do this, because you're still getting them to do things within that purview of being a parent, but not tying them down completely. They need to have that freedom of expression still. But it's tough, yes.
Amal, I see there is a question asked in Spanish.
Yes, sure. I'm gonna translate it to you. It's
Perfect.
asked how to help the child, to complete assignments in the classroom when he only has a 504 plan, so that he has a better adaptation in the classroom and in the applied, and it is applied at school.
Absolutely. So I would say that if you have concerns about kind of what is being provided through his 504 and you find that he's not being successful with the accommodations that are provided by the 504, it may be worth coming together as a school team to kind of talk through whether those supports are still supporting him to be successful, and if we need to look at either different or more strategies and more accommodations for the 504. So definitely reach out to the case manager, and they can support kind of that conversation with the school team. Okay, Rebecca asks, how do you recommend nudging or pushing someone with ADHD that has a fear of failure, but you want them to grow those executive functioning skills? I think, again, those opportunities in other places to build those skills. Carrie brought up the game Spot It, which is a visual discrimination game. It's a very quick, easy game to play. Finding organic ways that aren't that direct. Okay, now we're going to sit down and practice this. Really build those muscles before you introduce it. And then maybe there's a little bit more of an opportunity for them to be open to trying it because they feel like it's something they can do when they've had practice in other ways that feel less high stakes.
And I
And
would
actually
add, oh, go ahead.
kind of going off of what Ashley said, because I actually have the same issue with one of my kids. Building off of what they're already successful on, you can associate some of those skills with something that they're successful with in order to build that confidence in a smaller way, and then start to bring it into areas where you're seeing the struggle.
That's
Sorry,
what I
Trish,
was
go
gonna,
ahead.
I was gonna say the exact same thing. When you start with something you can do and you know you're good at it or you're successful, and have them do that and then say, well, let's try just a little bit more, whatever it is. I think of math, where kids, a lot of times kids have a fear of math because they've not been very successful. So where did they do really well? And then introduce one thing at a time so that they master it, so that they feel more confident. And, and celebrate. Here's another thing we talk about this, celebrate your failures. Your failures mean that you've learned something, that you can move on. When you give a test to a kid and they get 100, that's great, but what do they now need to learn? And maybe that new learning piece is not going to be easy. And that's okay. That's okay that it's not going to be easy. That's learning. It's like, again, lifting weights. When you first start lifting weights, you're doing 5 pounds. You're not doing 100 pounds. You move along slowly but surely. And I think kids, they want it now. They want it yesterday. And that's hard. That's a tough lesson to learn. So between being a perfectionist and wanting it yesterday, we as parents and as teachers have to be very patient as well. So.
And another question is, what would be a good approach to a child who feels using checklists increase his or her anxiety? This child has OCD and generalized anxiety. Oh,
Yeah,
Trish,
well,
I knew I could see your brain
well,
going.
well,
That's why I was
well,
waiting.
my computer is just a little, what about, we talk about this again for math or different things, folding it in half so they only see part of it, or maybe we just write down the first two things. It's just, that's all we're going to do. We're going to get that done. And then the next two things. So folding it down, not showing them the rest of it.
Just thinking, similar, like chunking it up or thinking about how we could just kind of make a plan verbally with the first thing we're going to start rather than having something visually there, having something just like, so where, having them choose where to start or giving them some clear choices and really just a start plan as opposed to seeing all of it at once.
My husband has ADHD and has terrible working memory. And one of the things that he uses, checklists just are not going to work from him. He's going to lose the checklist. I know it. But what we've started doing and something that he actually came up with, which is had that buy-in, had that real, like he was really motivated by it. So he carries around like an itty bitty little notebook, like this small. And puts it in his pocket. He doesn't use it as a checklist. He doesn't call it a checklist. He calls it his own working memory. And so anything that he is like, oh, I'm going to forget this, or I need to remember to do this, he writes it down. And I feel like it comes off with a lot less pressure than a checklist. A checklist feels like it must be done. This feels more of like a place for him to just help him remember things. So maybe kind of taking some of the stakes off of it, right? This is just kind of an opportunity to us to think about to brain dump everything that needs to get done. If not everything gets done, that's okay, but at least it's off our mind. And taking some of that intensity of kind of having to check off everything kind of off the table may help too.
I actually want to jump on that piece too. I've seen some students who don't like to see anything. And this is where technology might be a good thing, using a voice recorder as a reminder, right? Where they can just kind of brain dump exactly what Ashley was saying and then kind of come back to it later and just kind of use it in their own mental. And then they're not seeing it. It's not overwhelming. It's just kind of their thoughts. And I've seen a lot of students, especially those who see writing as an issue or reading as an issue. Students maybe with dyslexia, sometimes just being able to say it and brain dump it is a lot easier for them.
Stephanie just put in the Q&A Goblin Tools, which is an app I've never heard of. So I'm very interested. But it says Goblin Tools is a great app for breaking tasks into manageable mini tasks. And her daughter and her keep pens on them to write notes on your arms and your hands. So that's also another strategy. If you don't have the little notebook, which, full transparency, I accidentally washed it in the washing machine because he still has working memory deficits and got left in the in his pants pockets. So sometimes you might just need the arms and hands to write down whatever it is so you don't forget. Okay, another question is advice on self-awareness for a teen who thinks they know the material but then bomb the test. Know if anyone has any ideas. Carrie?
So, and part of my question is with the self-awareness, maybe they do know the material and they're struggling with being able to test. So sometimes looking at how they're testing can really help. So meeting with the teacher, reach out to the teacher and see, because sometimes what we tend to find is our students do know the material, but then when they come to this test and they have to put it all down, maybe a testing anxiety or their working memory isn't working in that moment. But then having students, again, when you have students with executive function or working memory issue, the more that they practice or do it in different ways, the more the material will stick. So incorporating different ways for them to answer questions, using colored pencils instead of one colored pen, or, incorporating different ways for the material to be learned and then understood can help really make it a concrete thought process in their head when they're taking those tests. But I would reach out to the teacher if you're not sure if they really are bombing the test because maybe there's a testing anxiety or a testing issue versus do they actually know the material? There's kind of two parts to that question.
Yeah, I'm curious. There's anonymous has multiple people who are anonymous, and there's a second part. I think it's attached to this question. If it's not, whoever it is, please let me know. But I think the whole thing is advice on self-awareness with teen who thinks they know the material but then bomb the test. And then I think this additional information about it. When the child has accommodations in a 504 plan for ADHD, but has been diagnosed with functional autism and is in middle school and will soon go to high school. I'm thinking those two are connected, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if that changes, Carrie, kind of your thoughts. I totally agree. I think that
Then that actually kind of solidifies my
Yeah.
thought that I would reach out to then the case manager and see what are those testing accommodations. We have quite a few, we've had many students who have functional autism, and when they get to a test, they just can't get it onto paper. And so there are other ways to see that the student has mastered the material. And really that's the goal, is to know that they know it. So reach out and see what accommodations they currently have and what maybe can be adjusted to better fit. So that way your child can show what they actually know.
Great. So another question is, how does FCPS train middle school teachers on recognizing and working with students with executive function difficulties? And how can we find out our behavior specialists are for other pyramids? So you can either look at the FCPS page as well as reaching out to your school team. We are in schools frequently, and most of our day is spent in the array of schools that we're in. So that if you ask somebody at the school system, either the counselors or administrator, or if you have a case manager, they will be able to name us right away. Who is supporting your child's school. And as far as training opportunities, there are trainings throughout the year available for executive function deficits and supports around that. And we also offer various coaching opportunities if there are students that specifically have executive function difficulties. We can serve as a coach for that teacher as well to kind of come up with plans and strategies for them. Okay, let's see. You may have already answered this, but I am struggling with my executive function right now and paying close attention, and I entered the presentation late. That's okay. Everyone every day has their own different level. Question is, when the child is chronically angry, how can you approach the child with trying something new, like how to not just throw your clothes on the floor as you try them on versus hang them back up or refold them? My child wants all her clothes spread out, and I've heard that this is fairly common. Any ideas on how to spread out the clothes to be visual and not spread them out on the floor in various piles? My initial thought is kind of thinking about the age group and the fact that your child is chronically angry. Is this kind of where we really want to spend our time really focusing on? I wonder if there's other opportunities for us to build some of those skills first before we approach the clothes, because it feels like the clothes may be a trigger for both you and her, and building skills in other avenues first, and then slowly start going to the clothes. Carrie, Trish, Christy, I don't know if you have any thoughts too.
I'm all about picking your battles. And if you've got a child who's chronically angry, I guess I'd be wondering what is causing her to be chronically angry. What is going on in that child's life, whether it's school or could be social, those are the kinds of things that that I would want to know about, because she is living a very narrow life to feel like that, unless she's chronically angry only at her parents and she's happy at school and with her friends, in which case she's a preteen. So you've got that as well. But if she throws her things on the floor and and it's in her room and it's her space, then she's going to have to live with it. If she can't find the dress that she wanted to wear, the, shorts or whatever, that's her pile and that's her deal. And she's going to have the consequences. You were not part of that. You don't need to be part of that. I think that's the hardest thing as a parent, is to separate yourself from what would work best and what would be more advantageous, to letting them kind of explore and finding out for themselves that, yeah, that didn't work well, and coming up with their solutions. That's very hard as a parent to let go.
And kind of building off of what Trish was saying about picking your battles, I do see, because I have a very similar issue with my son, I see the point of like the routine piece of it. So if it's impacting the morning routine too much, there are ways that where you can reinforce, maybe setting up that she wakes up a little bit earlier in order to be able to go through her clothes, and maybe setting a time limit and then reinforcing that in a positive way. Hey, I noticed that you were able to get dressed in 15 minutes. Great job. What do you want? I'll go pick up those pancakes that you wanted, the chocolate chip pancakes or whatever. Or setting certain days where, okay, now all your stuff is on the floor throughout the week. So on Saturdays, let's go ahead and clean it up so that way you can re-find your clothes again. But like Trish said too, allowing our kids, which is really hard, to have ownership and control over certain things. Maybe that's the thing she needs control over. But you know what? When you're in the bathroom, which is a shared space, your clothes cannot be just left on the floor everywhere. So being able to kind of set those boundaries and those expectations, and then those routines, and build off those skills. Some people just grow up to be messy adults and they're clean, but their stuff is just kind of everywhere. As long as they can find it and they have systems in order to help them access it and it doesn't become a frustration, that's where I could see that fear maybe coming in. So helping them find ways to reduce the overstimulation, maybe on a consistent basis, maybe every Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, Stephanie has another thing that she does in her house. So her favorite clothes hack is the 3-basket method. 3 different colored baskets with labels. One is clean, one is worn but still clean, and dirty. She says it saved her sanity when it comes to laundry, and that it's not feasible for everyone, probably because of the 3 baskets. But I feel like, it's better than many people have the chair of worn but still clean, right? That you just you're not ready to put it back. So having like another thing, like maybe a basket that's a little bit more contained, for kind of some of those middle ground clothes too. Okay. See, we got another one. How can teachers implement 504 programs and strategies with children who struggle to complete same-day assignments? How can they best address anxiety and frustration when they often mask many of the signs of their condition? In some of the trainings that we've done for teachers, we have taught a lot about masking and being able to support students and trying to figure out masking. Which is a challenge. As far as how can teachers implement 504 plans, it's really challenging without knowing specifics about the child, because I feel like 504 plans can be for an array of different needs. So I would really recommend kind of thinking about what you learned today, thinking about, what your child needs, and coming back to the 504 team, and seeing if you guys can work together to develop some strategies around completing those same day assignments. I know that can be a lot of pressure in those blocks. But I think without knowing more about the student, it would be hard for us to really be able to answer. So I would recommend reaching out to your school team, seeing out what they can provide, and if they need any other supports to help answer those questions for you. So here's more information about the student with the clothes. She's angry at home, but she is happy a majority of the time at school. So this is typical to be chronically angry at home as a young teen. How might we address that? And I do hear that these common area boundaries and things like that. I would say that being chronically angry at home may actually be a really great sign of how comfortable she feels at home. I know that's hard to hear. I remember staying in lots of meetings, but you're mom, you're the safe space. And then I became a mom and I was like, oh, I don't like that. I get the brunt of it all, right? But I think that that's a real testament to kind of the relationship you have, and that they're able to feel that ability to let out those emotions at home. That being said, we have done trainings in the past talking about proactive strategies around communication. We did those last year. They are available on the YouTube channel for the Family Resource Center. It may help to look at that video as a resource to maybe some of that proactive communication strategies. Is the first a session, and then there's a second session called Taming the Teenage Brain, which is more about kind of reactive strategies once they are kind of in that anchored state. It may be helpful to go kind of look through that and see if there's any strategies there that may support you. Carrie, Trisha, Chrissy, I know we only have about 5 minutes left, but I don't know if you wanted to chime in with anything too.
When that happens, I have been told by a psychologist that is very normal, and that it's part of the child separating away from the parent, and it's difficult for the child. So it's almost like they manufacture these moments to be angry with you, to say, well, I'm not going to listen to her. I know what I'm doing. It's their way of trying to become independent adults. And so look at it as, I mean, unless we're talking about something really horrible, look at it as their struggle to become independent. And it is a good thing. It's a bad thing, but it's also a good thing. So as long as it's not, like I say, something like, friends or drugs or whatever, it is very difficult for the parent, but know that that's typical. I think there's a book out called Yardsticks, and that's another good book maybe to look at, see if your library has it, and talks about those kinds of behaviors and developmental skills that children have at that age, 14. So good luck.
Do not be concerned that your daughter doesn't get angry. She just might not be an angry person. I'm not an angry person, so I was never angry as a teen either. We do have one last quick question. This is going to have to be our last question because I know we're running out of time. Amal, do you think we have time for one more?
I think we do. Yeah, this is gonna be
Okay.
our last. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. And yes, the book was called Yardsticks. That's the real quick question. It may be, it gets a little bit, it's really for elementary school and late and really beginning of middle school. So your child may have aged out of it, but it may be helpful if you have younger children. So Sarah says, my child visits with her dad all weekend 2 times a month and has a difficulty coming back home and implementing all the routines and processes. We are mindful to support her needs throughout the week. I'm not sure how to do that when she tends to shut down and it takes days to recover. Sarah, that's definitely a tough situation. I'd be curious if you can kind of get some of those strategies in place. The weekends are also just very different than the regular school week. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts.
Knowing if you already know the pattern of it, so set the expectation slightly different, right? Again, this is where maybe having her voice when she's better able to communicate, maybe after she's back in her routine, sitting down with her and saying, I've noticed this, what are some of the things that we have to do versus what we can do in order to help her kind of get back into those routines. We do it as teachers as well when kids come off of long breaks, right? We reset those expectations, but we also have to be mindful that, they've been off for 2 weeks doing whatever, or there was a snow day. So looking at those type of things and saying, okay, well, this is how we're going to reset it. And then really using that voice for that motivation, reinforcing it. Hey, you did great. You get to pick out dinner this week. Something small like that can really help build confidence in being able to come back.
Okay, thank you so much for all who attended with us today, and also for our great presenters, Ashley, Carrie, Christy, and Trish. Thank you for the great presentation and answering all the questions. Also, I would like to add that we have in our library the Yardsticks book available for checkout and with other resources. We will send you out next week the presentation, the recording and the presentation slides, along with some of our library materials links so you can check it out. And please communicate with us for any additional resources. And please take a few moments to fill out the survey to get your feedback about the presentation of today, and also if you have any questions or anything that you would like to see us presenting on for future webinars. Thank you all so much and have a great weekend.
Thank you all.